Welcome to Inside Aesthetics, the world's leading podcast for injectors and aesthetic businesses. I'm Dr. Jake Sloane, an aesthetic doctor with over 16 years experience in facial aesthetics.
And I'm David Segal, an entrepreneur and business mentor with over 20 years of experience in our industry. Our podcasts are aimed at industry professionals, and any information or advice given is general in nature. You should consult with a healthcare provider before undergoing any treatment.
You can also subscribe to us on Patreon for on-demand content for injectable and business education.
Hello guys, welcome to Chapter 9 of What's Trending in Aesthetics. How are you, buddy?
I'm very well. How are you doing, mate?
I'm good. Got coffee in hand, caffeinated, ready to roll.
Excellent. Now, for complete transparency, we are recording this one way in advance because I will be away by the time this one comes out. I'll be in America. So we're recording this early January, but hopefully this information will still be of relevance and edutainment.
Edutainment, valuetainment, edutainment, yes.
But, you know, I think these What's Trending ones are good because some of them afford us the ability to talk about stuff that maybe is overarching rather than trending for the month.
Yeah.
And some of these topics that we're going to talk about are, I think, important, maybe just on a broader scale rather than just because it's January.
Yeah, true. All right. Let's give people a flavor of what we're going to be talking about. So there's four main topics today. So the first one is a new toxin on the market, which is set to launch here next month in March, which is Relfydess. Second topic is around the conference model and, well, I guess how it's evolved over time. Has it arguably become antiquated with just rinse and repeat and people getting, I guess, conference fatigue?
Yes, it's an interesting one. And I've made a few decisions about that, but we'll get into it. Third one we're going to tackle, and this is quite relevant to us personally, it's content moderation. And just about a week ago, Meta decided to stop moderating a lot of their content on Facebook, which, you know, doesn't sound immediately linked to us. But, you know, when we think about, you know, content and who we're going to talk about and what topics, etc., we are ultimately moderators. And I think the focus should also be on how do we make those decisions? Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Sure. The fourth topic is talking about the trend of nurses in particular and doctors as well, but mainly nurses leaving their traditional hospital system to join aesthetics for various reasons. And that's a trend that's huge. It's not just here in Australia, it's global. You and I were reading reports or stories rather this morning from the UK, Australia, and the United States showing this is a major trend that's happening. And I guess what's given us the motivation to potentially talk about this today is we've had some regulatory issues going on here in Australia, and we want to talk about, well, is this the reason behind why these regulations are now looking to make it more difficult for nurses to operate independently? So I think it's just worth unpacking and discussing because I think there could be some validity to it.
Yeah, 100%. So 4 juicy topics. Let's start with the kind of the easy one to ease ourselves into this podcast.
Yes.
So Relfydess, it's a good new name for yet another new toxin produced by Galderma. They, if you didn't know, they already produce one called Dysport. In fact, they do another one called Alluzience available in certain countries. So they'll have 3 toxins, which in itself is quite unusual. And one of my questions for you is that going to cannibalize their own business to some degree, or at least one of their toxins? I know Alluzience isn't sort of launched globally, so that won't be an issue in some territories. But new toxin. People always get excited about new products just because it's a new toy to play with. This one is novel for a number of reasons, and we will dedicate a whole episode to get into the science and the research. But essentially, it's a liquid toxin. As I understand it, it comes in a 100-unit vial, so analogous to Botox in terms of how it's dosed, 20 focal on label, for example. But it also has this ability to last up to 6 months in around 75% of patients. So a couple of new novel things, and it's actually made from a new botulinum toxin as well. So it's not from the whole strain, which is, you know, all the other ones have come from that strain. This is a new strain.
So is it still a toxin type A?
Yes, it is. So it's just a different strain.
Different bacteria.
Yeah, they found it in soil, apparently.
Huh.
So there we go. Anyway, that might be misinformation. I still need to go to the launch, which is next month. But, you know, anyway, that's the high level thing. Now, relating this to business and I guess more practical issues, when we've discussed this a while ago, but now we have this sort of other paradigm of toxins lasting longer, comes in a different form? Maybe save some money here, but then you lose some money there. Like, what are your basic business thoughts on this new toxin?
Well, maybe I'll premise it by saying that we've had a ton of new products coming onto the market in the last, let's call it 18 months. We've had new fillers, collagen stimulators, toxins galore. So this is yet another product that's coming onto the market. And the more there is of something, whatever that may be, the price generally goes down because there's more competition. People are looking to get that product on their clients' shelves. So therefore it becomes a more competitive landscape. So your first question or sort of premise was, what does this do to Dysport? And that's a really good question, because I think that Galderma just have a license to distribute Dysport. They don't produce it. So if I was the Dysport company, is that Ibsen? Ibsen. The question I'd be asking is, well, that's great, but what are your reps going to be pushing? What are you going to be selling? So I don't want to put words in Galderma's mouth because I have no idea what their business plan is or the way they're thinking about it, but just using logic and understanding market forces, that it's going to impact their sales. So are we going to potentially see Dysport leaving the hands of Galderma and falling into the distribution rights of someone else potentially? I mean, I think that's the elephant in the room, right?
I mean, this was a few years ago, and I really don't want to misquote this, but I understood that Galderma and Ibsen had some sort of licensing law for around 20 years, and this was sort of re-signed a number of years ago. So presumably that's still in play for X amount of years.
Yeah.
But, if both parties maybe decide this isn't kind of going to work for us, maybe they would exit that quicker.
I think you'd have to safely assume that there'd be clauses within those contracts that would get either side out. There'd be performance metrics that people would need to be adhering to maintain.
Oh, this is a big call. It may not happen at all.
Yeah.
It could just be 50-50. Everyone's still happy.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting one.
Yeah,
and certainly it's interesting for their third one called Illusience, because, we did a podcast on this a while ago with Christoph Mertschein, and, he even said himself that maybe it's a little bit more stingy. Yes, that one comes as a liquid. So that was its sort of novel USP. But at the same time, if that hasn't maybe kicked on and been launched in other countries, then maybe that one has failed.
Yeah.
And maybe this is like the third iteration of, Galderma toxin. I really don't know. I'm just speculating here.
Well, and then the next point is with longer lasting toxins. And obviously this is going to be the same situation with products like Daxxify, for example. Longer lasting toxins, your first thought as a business owner / cosmetic provider would be, well, hold on a second. If my patients don't need to come in as often, am I potentially going to be seeing a downturn in my patient numbers? But I think it's a little bit more complicated than that, because there are other factors you have to think about. So I think the first one that comes to mind is, are my patients going to love me more because now they don't have to come in as often? So therefore, I'm now seen as a clinic that has a longer lasting toxin, and I'm going to refer all my friends to you because, hey, Dr. Jake uses this product and I only have to come in every 6 months. So that's better for me because I'm now got a point of difference from my competitors. The other situation is, well, if you can treat patients less frequently, then if you're someone that's busy, say, for example, you, Jake, who you booked up months and months in advance, if you only have to see these patients every 6 months, does that allow you to potentially add more patients to your calendar because they're less frequently visiting you? So therefore, the number of patients that you can interact with increases.
Yep.
And then the other thing as well is, do you look at potentially charging a premium for a product that's lasting longer? So I think it's a good idea to just always think beyond what's the initial impact potentially to my business. And again, going back to, what are we doing? We're not here to make money as our primary objective. The primary objective should always be, I want to do the best possible thing by my patient. And if I can provide them a product that's going to suit them better that they want, I have an obligation to do that, and the money will come. That's kind of the way I think about it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's all really good, valid points, actually. Yes, the bottom line is, what's going to suit my patients the best? What are they going to be happy with? But also, let's just assume it's safe, etc. But what are they going to be happy with, satisfied with? And then, of course, if you're going to keep them really happy for 6 months, I don't believe you can charge them the same as what you charge for 4 months.
Yeah.
That's just illogical. It wouldn't be sustainable. You're going to be shooting yourself in the foot, and ultimately you'll do worse. So it'd be interesting to see the launch price. I haven't seen that. I don't think it's been made available yet by the time this podcast is out. But you would assume this is going to be a premium, more expensive product, which up until now, all of the new toxins have kind of been far cheaper or middle of the road to sort of be competitive. Whereas this one's going to be an outlier, I would assume, because it has totally different sort of properties. And so how people decide to charge that, I mean, you know, you're the business guy, not me. Would you suggest that people sort of look at, you know, the percentage of how long it's lasting and add that on to the cost price? To the retail price?
Potentially. I mean, maybe you don't go to that extent totally. I mean, I see it more of like, it's probably you're paying for increased risk mitigation, because this is a toxin now that has potential, if you mess it up,
longer headaches.
If you get like, say, a ptosis, for example, then patients got to live with that for longer, arguably.
I mean, I will caveat with saying it is really rare that happens.
Yeah, sure.
So yes, it's something to factor in, but it's not something that every day you're going to be worrying about.
Yeah, sure.
I wouldn't anyway.
Yeah. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, your patient's paying for a result. Not for how much your toxin cost you and what your margin is. At the end of the day, are you providing a great service to your patients, like the experience with you? And if you're now going to be able to offer them something that's going to suit their lifestyle more, then it makes sense that you probably charge a premium for it. To be honest, but what that amount is, I mean, you know, how long's a piece of string? It depends on someone's business model. Where are they placed in the market?
Here's a trick. I mean, if you adopted 100% Relfidess, let's just say you're a Galderma fan and you convert 100%. If you were not having to mix up with saline, now this may sound like a silly cost, but it's certainly a cost.
And time.
And let's say you're using preserved saline as well, which is a little bit more costly. You should sort of do a cost analysis of how much saline do you use a year? What would that be back in your pocket? That's another thing to take into consideration. Sure. Time. Look, most people presumably in their consults have factored out enough time to mix up some toxin regardless of whether it's made up or not. But maybe it would make the patient experience 5% better because you're spending more time looking at them, talking to them.
Sure.
Maybe.
And then I guess you've also got the decreased risk of screwing up your dilution.
Yeah, which again, you would hope never happens, but it's not impossible.
Oh, it happens.
Oh, yeah, exactly. It's not impossible.
I've seen it.
I mean, look, funny bringing that up. I'm doing a roadshow with Allergan soon on Botox, and my talk will be focused on dilution and duration and that sort of interplay that podcast we did with John Joseph. And yes, if you are going to start messing around with dilution, doesn't matter what toxin you're using, you want to be really clear what's in that vial of toxin. Because you can easily confuse yourself, especially if you've got a couple of bottles on the bench. So yes, it's a good point. It's not impossible. And we have had Julie Bass-Kaplan talking about something happened in their clinic where they used, I think it was sodium bicarbonate instead of saline. They thought it was saline, and you know, these things happen. And
particularly when you've got multiple injectors using the same room.
So compliance is of the order. Documentation and
So I guess it just takes one step or one possible variable that could screw things up.
Now, here's an interesting one that I want to throw at you. If we're saying that a toxin lasts for 6 months, regardless of the brand, but it lasts longer than normal, but only 75% of patients get there, not everyone, how are you going to cost this for patients who sometimes don't get there?
Well, maybe you have a policy that if it doesn't last as advertised, then maybe if you are charging a premium, you reimburse them.
You get a rebate.
Or you maybe credit their next treatment, for example. I mean, I'm having a chance to think about this. Probably something like that.
Look,
but nothing's guaranteed in medicine. That's the thing. Or nothing's guaranteed in life at all.
But if you are going to charge a premium, let's say, I don't know, 20% more, whatever it is, and they don't get there, they're going to be pissed.
Yeah, of course.
Also, it would effectively be a failed treatment in their mind anyway.
Yeah, false advertising almost. But I think if you let them know, hey, 75% of patients do get increased longevity. We don't know whether you're one of those people yet or not. If you're not, if you come back, you need to come back for your review. Really important. If you come back at your review at the right time, and we both agree that it hasn't, which obviously needs to be backed up by photographs, because a lot of people like do weird things and they'll scrunch their face up and start recruiting different muscles and then go, hey,
just training in the bathroom with selfies of themselves.
So I think that you put some kind of policy in place that if it's apparent that it hasn't, then perhaps they get that premium credited to the next treatment, for example.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't like the idea of refunds, but yeah, maybe.
Whenever you add in a new toxin to your practice, I would suggest, following up a lot more people than you normally do. Get some candid sort of parameters. So how did it feel?
Yeah.
When did it kick in? Did it feel heavy, lighter, whatever? Invent your own questionnaire, but be very specific about what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And obviously photos are going to be like key. And I don't mean ones from home, but bring them in, do your standard photos, frowning, raising, etc. And, treat it as your own mini clinical trial. Like it's one thing for a company to say, here's our data based on 1,000 people in 3 countries.
Yeah.
But if you do your own trial of your own patients in Australia, you might find something different.
Yeah.
You might find they're way happier.
Yeah.
And it lasts 8 months. Who knows?
Yeah.
So I reckon for that first cohort, I probably wouldn't change the price. I mean, obviously I don't want to lose money, but I'd probably keep it the same.
Yeah.
And say, give me your honest opinion.
Yeah.
And maybe choose 50 patients, 100 patients.
Yeah.
And then you can start playing around with your price and book them in for 6 months, not 4 months, and so on.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
But it's going to be interesting. I'm keen to see what happens.
Yeah. Well, time will tell.
100%. Now, we will get into that product in way more detail in a future podcast. So I guess we'll move on from that one.
Yes.
Now, you brought this up this morning, and I thought it was highly relevant because people in our WhatsApp are talking about CAS, which is coming up very shortly. Already would have happened by the time this podcast is out. But lots of people are getting what you said was it conference fatigue?
Well, I mean, I'm in a really privileged position where I talk to providers, doctors, nurses from not only here, but different parts of the world, Europe, United States. And inevitably something comes up during our conversation around what conferences they're going to, where should they be going to, staff requesting to go to conferences. And I guess the take-home message from me is everyone's just getting a bit over it because they're expensive. You've then got to be out of your business, or your staff have to be out of your business. So there's an opportunity cost while they're not there or you're not there. You're not making income. Plus then you've got the expense of travel and actual tickets, which aren't cheap either.
Yeah.
And then people sort of saying, look, they're kind of all different variations of the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of format dressed up in a different way. We've got rooms full of companies trying to sell their wares to you. And then you've got various rooms going on with people on stage with sort of death by PowerPoint kind of presentations. And some of them are great, some of them aren't. But I think people aren't getting the same level of benefit out of them that they used to. And I think they're just kind of feeling like it's the same thing. It's essentially become, in many cases, an expensive socializing, networking event. And in this economy where things have gotten more difficult, patients have become less forgiving. If you're not available, they'll go and see one of your competitors. I think people are starting to reassess whether or not it's worthwhile for them and or their staff to be attending.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. It's the same as what I hear from people. And I think I did an Instagram video on this straight after Monaco last year. I was like, what's the value of this stuff? And I personally, because I've been to so many, especially over the last 3 or 4 years, and really sort of tried to invest in my own education, but also speak, and kind of wondering what is the value anymore. But that's from a personal perspective, someone injecting for 17 years.
Yes.
Now, if you're newer, maybe you do want to throw yourself headfirst into this stuff and absorb as much as you can. I think that's a valid argument, but also conversely, you can really confuse yourself. It can be highly overwhelming and it may not be pitched at your level. But yeah, from the people that we've spoken to, lots of people are asking, well, what one is the best one and why?
Yeah.
And a lot of people, like you said, they're using this as a tax saving benefit to sort of join onto a holiday. It's not always about the education. It's a lot about socialization and networking, which it's valid. You want to go and meet people? Cool. Like, do it. And you should do it. There's lots of doors that will open if you start meeting people, but you got to be clear why you're going.
Yeah.
If you're going to pay $2,500 for a ticket maybe $10,000 for a ticket, a flight from Australia if you go business, or even if you go economy, it's not cheap.
Yep.
Food, alcohol, all the other things that
accommodation.
go with accommodation. It's a huge endeavor.
Yeah.
And it's actually interesting. My colleagues who are in London, they will go to many conferences because it's a super cheap flight. They're often sponsored because they're speakers, and there's almost no cost to them.
Yeah.
And so they'll go to many. Whereas for us in Australia, it's a real... You've got to really be clear on why you're going.
I feel like Christopher Columbus every time I go.
Yes. And then forget the time where it's the jet lag after and before when you get there.
Yeah, of course.
So for us Aussies, we've really got to be picky about what we get.
Yeah. So I think from conference providers or conference organizers' perspective, I think they really need to think about how they're going to make it different. The format, maybe it's more personal, maybe it's more interactive, more hands-on. I think you've got to sort of break away from just the sameness, which I think is getting fatiguing for people. And for business owners who are wanting to go themselves or want to send their staff members, they need to put a business case together for why they should be going. Like, what is it about this conference that you want to go to? Which talks do you want to go and see? What knowledge or information are you planning to come back with? Is there a particular product or meeting that you need to have? Product you want to get educated on, or someone that you want to meet with for networking purposes? Who is that person? I think you just need to go there and actually be able to justify to yourself why you're making this decision to give up your time and your money to do that.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that often gets spoken about is people that have got businesses, that have got staff, and they feel compelled to send them to these conferences because they want to show that they're committed to these people's education. And a lot of the time, this starts to become just an expectation. And then so they want to go every year. And then if you send one person, why did this person go and I didn't get to go? I've always been of the opinion that people should be willing to invest in their own education as well, because people don't value anything that they get for free. So when I'm talking to my consulting clients and this conversation comes up, I'm always saying, I think that you should support someone who wants to put their education as a priority in their life. Number one, do they need to have worked with you for a certain period of time before they become eligible for that? Two, I think there's an expectation that there's some kind of contribution from them. So we'll call the percentage X, but maybe up to like 50, 60% that you may expect them to contribute to the costs of going, because, as I said, they're out of your business as well. So you're actually losing twice, really. And get them to present you with a business case. Why do I want to go to this conference? Maybe they need to come back and there's a certain expectation that they're presenting to the team, what it is that they learnt. And there's certain people they want to network with that's going to benefit the business, and actually come back and actually have something to show for them going, rather than just having their boss pay for them to get boozed up and hang out with their friends overseas. And,
it's a really good point. And even if you're not working in a business, I think you need to ask yourself those questions. Yeah. Why am I going to IMCAS or whatever, AMWC? Which talks or speakers have I identified that I'm going to get value from? Or which company am I going to go and check out their new device and actually have a play with it and speak to their sales rep and their team and whatever it is. If you don't have that strategy, save you money, if I'm completely honest.
Well, we've also got so much information online now for free.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got things like our podcast. People have got great Patreon communities, like people, as you said, like Julie Bass-Kaplan and Dan Julian. And there's so many people out there that are providing content for a fraction of what it would cost you to go to a conference, and you can do it in the comfort of your own home at a time that suits you.
Yeah.
Why would you there has to be a compelling reason that you're going to get some benefit that you can't get from online.
Yeah. Something that really annoyed me last year, and I hope I don't fall sort of victim to this, because I understand the pressures of trying to create new work or even new podcasts every time. But I noticed some of the speakers at AMWC last year, they were literally recycling the same verbatim talk that I'd heard like a year ago, whatever it was. And, it's okay. Obviously the audience changes. Sometimes there's relevance to that. But if you're not passionate and if you're just trotting it out without sort of a new flavor, I feel like that's sort of shortchanging people.
Yeah. I mean, I've just started to do talks as well. I'm sort of new to the scene, and it's not something that I've traditionally been as comfortable with as doing podcasts, but I'm getting better at it. But I've even started to think, okay, well, I gave this talk last time. Maybe I can still use the same premise, but I need to work out a way to take it to the next level, or to add to it, or to adjust it to make it more relevant to what's going on at the time, or something I've learned in the intervening period between presenting at time A and time B.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to caveat that, because I'll be in America at the time the podcast is probably out. Two of the 3 talks that I'm doing are respins of talks I did 2 years ago at the same event, because I want to sort of update my knowledge from 2 years ago and represent that in a slightly, modern way.
Yeah.
So anyone who watched those talks 2 years ago, they're not the same. They are slightly different.
Yes. Yeah. But obviously, you get better at presenting over time as well, and things change and evolve, and the industry is moving so quickly.
Yeah.
So I think it's okay, but as long as you're putting a new spin on it and presenting it in a different capacity, maybe you put some more interactive sections. I mean, I really love the idea of making things more interactive.
But I mean, we've discussed it many times, and we've even thrown the idea around of maybe doing something live for our Patreons or listeners, like a live event.
Yeah.
But what that looks like, I really don't know. I mean, it's one thing to get 100 people in a room, make it a little bit more intimate than 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Could have some speakers, maybe, the mic goes in the crowd and there's more sort of interaction with the crowd.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that could be done through a Zoom.
Well, okay. So for example, I think like the fastest growing area of content is podcasts at the moment.
Yeah.
So people love watching discussions. So maybe, and this isn't us trying to promote us doing podcasts at conferences, although that would be pretty cool, to actually engage in a 2-way discussion. So if there's, let's say we're interviewing Michael Caine at a conference and we've got a list of topics that we're going to be covering, things we're going to be discussing, maybe people that are attending the conference get an opportunity to submit questions that they'd like potentially asked.
Yeah.
And then they get to sit and watch a conversation that's interactive. There's two forces sort of creating this product that is, I think, a lot more engaging than just sort of watching someone on a lectern give a sort of a monologue. And so I think it allows for nuance, context. You can be a little bit, humorous. People who are attending,
it's certainly not planned or edited.
Yeah, and people that are attending get to contribute to the question, to what's being asked or the content that's being provided. So you've actually now got a vested interest in that actual discussion.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just one idea. Some of these talks go for, I was at one last year that almost went for 2 hours. I just wanted to shoot myself.
Yeah.
It was just a one-way thing, slide after slide after slide. And with someone with ADHD, I was just like, oh my God, please kill me.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I think that everyone has their own learning style or needs, and yours would be very different to mine, and vice versa. So trying to cater to the average crowd is difficult. Some people want to get visual information, some want to listen, some want to just, listen to a conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe a mix of all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, Stephen Liu, he's tried to sort of mix things up with his aesthetics conference over the last few years. Yeah. And I hear again that he'll mix it up again this year. So there are some people out there trying to address this.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's cracked it, to be completely honest.
No, well, you got to take risks and see what works and get feedback.
I mean, look, ultimately, and this isn't a dig at anyone, but ultimately to make these conferences successful, they need to be scaled, and that takes money and that takes sponsors. And then that does drive some of the content that's produced or put out there. So there's always a trade-off.
Yeah.
Unless you were completely independent, you funded it from your own pocket, and you know, you just said, I'm not paying for anyone to fly in or speak, but this is what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, maybe they don't need to be 2 and 3 day events. Maybe they can be done at a more
I suspect they're done that way to maximize the spend and the money invested.
Yeah, but maybe you don't need the same sort of resources. If they're more boutique, bespoke sort of events that only go for like half, people can probably justify a day out of their clinic or half a day out of their clinic. And making them more personal, more intimate. So maybe there's less attendees. You don't need to have the same type of space. You don't need the same number of corporate sponsors, and therefore you make them more lightweight, more nimble, more digestible for people. The smaller group will make people feel more inclined to be interactive with it. So I don't know. I just think there's different models that need to be explored.
Yeah. I mean, look, the reason people go to Monaco, for example, is one, because it's a cool place.
Sure.
But two, hundreds of famous people and people that you will hear from are in the same room.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a whole networking and the weather and everything else, but people go because the personalities are under one roof.
Yeah.
If you don't have pharma backing or money backing it, how do you get anyone under the roof?
Yeah. Look, I still think there's a place for the traditional model. I just think we need more options and we need to mix it up because it's the same.
See, I do wonder whether everything that you've just said could be done on a live podcast, but as we are now, but with some sort of live added sort of dimension to it, where we have all of our listeners online.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a way of doing it. We just haven't looked into it, where we could take those questions and there could be more of a live dynamic where we put it out live rather than recorded.
Yep.
And our guests has to think on their feet, or we have to think on our feet with those questions.
Yeah.
I reckon it could be done.
Yeah.
And then that scales the opportunity. We don't have to worry about the size of the room or money because we're just here, but with thousands of people on the line.
Yeah, that's great. And people get to hear how stupid we actually are without the magic of editing. So it'd be a reality check.
Yeah, look,
I thought David and Jake are really smart. No, actually, they're not. David's got a good editor.
Yeah, we've just got a great editor. I think there's something in that.
Yeah.
So we'll need to explore that one.
Totally.
Okay, cool. Now, this is a seemingly not related one, but I can promise you it is. So you alerted me the other day to Joe Rogan's podcast with God, what's his name from Meta?
Zuckerberg.
Yes, Mark Zuckerberg.
With his new perm and his cool pendant and his T-shirt. Well, I mean, so Meta has essentially Meta has made the decision to go down the path of X, or formerly known as Twitter, and do away with fact checkers who are sort of, from what I understand, I'm certainly no subject matter expert on this, but what I understand is that there were companies that are employed from around the world in local areas to fact check certain things people were saying.
Yeah.
And I think that, not wanting to get into the whole controversy of COVID, but I think most people that have sort of been across the situation sort of at the time saw lots of people's opinions being censored.
Well, he said this on the podcast.
People being taken offline. We've also seen with, things like the Twitter files where it became known that the government was essentially coercing or forcing these companies to take down information that they didn't want. And a lot of that information has proven to be true.
Yes.
And so people start to think, well, gosh, these fact checkers are not perfect. We don't want governments potentially telling these companies what to say. That starts to become a little bit sort of, Orwellian, which is potentially problematic.
Yeah.
And so they've gone down the community notes.
Yeah, we mentioned that on our last What's Gender in Aesthetics.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting watching them have that sort of 180. And then I guess that has led us to think about, well, what is it that we're doing?
Yeah.
We're seen as, I guess, subject matter experts or industry thought leaders on certain things, but really we're not. We are just two guys in a room with microphones. We come from different areas within the industry and we've got our own areas of expertise, and we get on subject matter experts who are, again, giving their opinion. And just like everything else in life, nothing is for sure. Everything is a fact until new evidence emerges and we go, oh, actually, that wasn't right. And now we know this.
Yeah.
And we started to think, gosh, we hope people aren't taking everything that we say or our guests say as absolute gospel and truth. It's just an opinion, another data point that people should be using to formulate how they want to practice this discipline.
Yeah. Look, it's something that I've grappled with almost from the get-go when we did this podcast, because, we're not saying we are the truth, but of course, by putting ourselves out there to potentially tens of thousands of people listening, that's gonna have some influence in whatever way, whether it's good or bad. There's influence. Now, when we're contacted by companies or various guests or people to say, "Hey, I'd love to come on and do a podcast," ultimately, it's either me or you or both of us going, Is that a good idea? A bad idea? Do we like them?
Yeah.
How we come up with that decision is kind of a bit arbitrary, to completely honest, because it's almost based on personal bias, I guess, or interest, more to the point. I mean, there's been a handful of podcasts in the past where it wasn't maybe my particular cup of tea, and certainly for you, you probably thought, oh, this is not really in my wheelhouse, but we do it because we try and make it a balanced podcast. Some things you're stronger on, some things I'm stronger on, and some things neither of us are strong on. And we just get an interesting guest who we just have to believe what they say because we're not experts in that topic. Yeah. But it's a tricky one for us because ultimately we are moderating in some way. We've had a couple, won't mention names. In fact, we've had one podcast where we both agreed to scrap it. Yeah. Won't mention when or why or how, but we just thought, we're not going to put this out. Yeah. We've had a couple of podcasts. We've just had to remove certain things where either we or the guest reach out before publication to say, hey, I just don't want that bit in there. Yeah. And we go, okay, well, fair enough. But things have to be moderated in some way. We can't just record garbage. Yeah. I mean, I think a little bit of editing just makes it a smooth, nice, listenable podcast. But I mean, how do you feel personally about our podcast being edited or moderated? I mean, where do we stop? What should the checks and boundaries be?
I mean, all you can do is your best based on the knowledge that you have at the time. As I said, I think that it's important for us to reiterate that people should do their own research, their own due diligence, and just use this as one data point, and then sort of look at many others and then formulate their own opinion on something. I mean, then we've got the other issue as well, which is, monetizing the podcast and sponsors that want to come on and utilize this platform to advertise a product or a service. And we're constantly grappling with that because this has grown so far beyond what we had expected, both in terms of success, but also time, energy, resources. And at some point you say, well, okay, how do we make this worth our while? You come to my house, you have time away from your family, away from your practice. And likewise, I give up things as well. How do you do that without then compromising the quality of what it is you're putting out? Because it's really tempting when someone says, hey, I want to give you all this money to come on and talk about this. And you have to go, yeah, well, the money will be great, but is this going to be great content? Is this person reputable? Does this sort of fall in line with, our philosophies on the podcast? And it's always really difficult. There's no easy answer because this space has kind of emerged seemingly out of nowhere really quickly and become like a really important, I guess, educational tool for people in whatever it is that they're trying to educate themselves on.
Yeah.
It's I don't know the answer.
I was listening to a little bit of the Mark Zuckerberg podcast on my way here, and I just found it really jarring and rubbish that the way that the ads are just thrown into the middle of the podcast, not even with a warning, it just happens. And it's very disruptive to the flow of your thinking when you're trying to follow a podcast. Yeah. But also just the way he does it, and I'm sure Joe Rogan doesn't listen, but the way he does it sounds very...
You are. Hi, Joe.
Yeah. It sounds very disingenuous. It sounds like he's reading. It doesn't feel personal.
Probably AI.
Any way. No, I don't think it is. I think he's just reading it.
Oh, okay.
But, if we're going to promote a product, I can assure you either David or myself have either used it or we know a reasonable amount about it to have it on the podcast. I can assure you of that.
Yeah.
We would never have something on here that's just like, we're not just reading from a script.
Yeah.
And that is something that I can validate if you're listening and ever wondering why we do things.
Yeah. And I guess that's kind of why we lent on Patreon again. And I guess this is an opportunity to plug that, is it's our opportunity to create a community of people who are really hyper passionate about what we do and they're invested in their education. It's a way for us to make income for the podcast without giving into corporate, pressure or people wanting to throw money at us to come on and talk about whatever it is they want to sell.
Yeah.
Or doing ad reads which annoy people, because we've thought about all this stuff for sure, and we've steered away from it because the underlying philosophy has always been: is the listener experience going to be great? Is it educational? Is this person reputable? Are people going to find it entertaining? And if we can't tick those boxes, then it doesn't really matter how much money someone throws at us, because in the end of the day, it's a slippery slope. Once you start compromising your values or what it is you set out to do from the beginning, then people will just stop listening.
Yeah. I mean, if there's listeners abroad from outside Australia who wonder, why don't you do a podcast on, I don't know, X brand with X company? And we can't. By law, it has to be on label, and there's many compliance laws around, talking about drugs, etc. And we don't want to be obviously a sort of a non-compliant podcast, but also the brands would never want to put themselves in that position. Yeah. So that's why we get individuals on, just have a chat. Yeah. It's not gospel. It's just personal experience and someone's thoughts.
Yeah.
And that's why you shouldn't base, all of your sort of fact finding on one podcast or what we say. You go away and read the studies and go and ask other people as well.
Totally. And again, just to plug Patreon, for anyone that's sort of listening to this, I mean, even if you think, well, maybe I don't need Patreon, if you like what it is that we do and you think that our community and our industry is better for having this type of information out there and I guess our showcasing of various guests and opinions, support us.
Yeah. Actually, linking back to our previous trend about the conferences, I've had at least 5 people say to me, you know what, this might sound silly, Jake, but the Patreon that you and David do for $50 a month, or Australian dollars, probably cheaper in American, it's way better value than me going to one conference.
Yeah.
Because you guys are producing, X amount of videos per month or whatever, but more so you've got the touch points of your WhatsApp groups for asking questions and getting direct support. And so, maybe conferences had their day and people need more day-to-day education.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the beauty of things like Patreon, not just ours, but others as well.
And you can do it in your pajamas.
Yeah. So moving forwards, how would we moderate our podcast better? Well, I don't know. I don't think we're going to have a sort of a real consensus on what we allow or don't allow. I mean, it's very rare that we say no.
Yeah.
We certainly say no to individuals. We understandably, people are opportunistic. They want to come on to brand themselves, a bit of PR experience. And, I'm not sort of saying that that's a bad thing, but it's not that relevant to our listeners.
Yeah.
If it's not going to be useful or give us a new source of education that we've not had before, what's the point for us?
Yeah, sure.
So please, if you're listening, it's not, we're not arrogant. We're not saying, no, you're not worthy, but it's got to be some value to it.
It's got to be novel. It's got to be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's something we haven't covered before. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you do have a good idea, by all means, reach out. We're happy to always listen. Yeah. Now, your fourth point about nurses leaving the profession in droves.
Oh, okay. So, just to give people some background context, here in Australia, there's been a lot of moving parts recently around prescribing for cosmetic nurses here in Australia around supply of products. Does the doctor need to be physically in the clinic? Do they not? The law's grey on it, and there's different opinions, and I'm not here to say which is right and which is wrong. So concurrently to that situation being ever evolving, and by the time this comes out, it's probably progressed even more than that. And we'll probably have some further clarity on it. And we will probably at some point do a dedicated podcast on it, particularly for our Australian listeners. And by the way, we're starting to think about doing an extra podcast every so often that will not be on a Friday, that will be for region specifics, because I can appreciate that people in the United States or the UK don't really give a toss about regulations here in Australia, not very interesting to them.
Yeah.
So we potentially will look at doing a bonus podcast that'll be for, if you are an Australian audience, this is highly relevant for you.
Yes.
If you're in LA, you probably don't care.
Yeah. Just so you can dip in out and at least get your sort of more general Friday podcast.
But anyway, back to what I was saying. While this has been going on with all these regulatory question marks and things coming out here in Australia, there's been this global trend of practitioners, mainly nurses, obviously doctors as well, fleeing the public health system for whatever reason, whether it's working hours, pay, conditions, stress, etc., to come into the aesthetics market because it's deemed as easier work, it's less stressful. I read one quote where one of the nurses was talking about how her conversations have changed from, tell me about this trauma to how was your trip in Greece? Like it's just it's a paradigm shift.
Yeah, definitely is.
But maybe it's become too attractive to the point where now the public system is struggling to keep a certain amount of practitioners, both nurses and doctors, in there. And as a response to this in Australia, is the reason all these regulations are sort of coming to the front and sort of putting pressure on particularly nurses, is it to try and stop them leaving the public system and try and coerce them back in there? I don't know the answer, whether that's a no or a yes, but it's interesting.
Yeah. Look, to add to your statistics, I read an article published early last year, and it said that in the UK, I think this was only Scotland actually, 4,000 nurses up until 2020 were leaving every year, the NHS. After COVID, that jumped to 7,500 per year, just in Scotland. I mean, that's kind of an unbelievable number, really. I mean, I don't know how many nurses there are on total, but that's a significant number. It is. Now, that's not to say that all of them are going to aesthetics. It's just leaving the workforce. Yeah. But we know anecdotally that many do. Yeah. It's not that they don't want to work; they just don't want to be in a hospital. Yeah. So they're obviously looking for a nursing profession outside of hospital, and aesthetics does seem to be, obviously very attractive. Good working hours, it's glamorous and so on. And you sort of become a business owner. So that's attractive for people.
Of course. Independence, autonomy.
Yeah. So look, I don't know whether the government do have some sort of, explicit mandate sort of behind the scenes to sort of stem the flow. I don't know. Yeah. Have you heard any evidence of that?
No, I haven't, but it's just trying to connect the dots. And as you know, I love a conspiracy.
Well, wasn't there something in Australia, I don't want to misquote, a year or two ago where the government announced that new graduate nurses have to do a certain amount. They can't just go straight into private practice.
I think so. I can't remember. But,
I never heard anything more about that after it was announced.
No, but I guess it sort of raises the deeper question, which is why are these people leaving? Because they don't feel like they're being valued. They're not being paid enough for what they have to go through. And I kind of understand where they're coming from. So whether you're a police officer or an ambulance driver or a nurse or a doctor, a school teacher, like all these people, in my humble opinion, have probably got the most important jobs in society, really.
Yeah.
And I don't think, for the most part, although, I couldn't quote you salaries that they're all earning around the world, but sort of anecdotally, it seems like for the amount of training and study that they have to do, the hours that they're asked to work, the potential risk that they're putting themselves
and the
in.
severity of what they're doing every day.
I mean, to me, they should be the highest paid people in society. And then you've got someone, for example, and not having you got real estate agents. I said this in a WhatsApp group. How is it that a real estate agent, was driving a $200,000 car with a $10,000 suit, who basically walks people through houses for a living, is earning
capitalism,
earning huge amounts of money? I know, but I'm just saying, like, it seems it feels unfair. It's a societal issue. Like, why are the most important jobs not being paid appropriately? And if those people were paid properly and looked after, then you probably wouldn't have as many people leaving. But trying to force people through regulations and laws to put handcuffs on them, it's sort of like the stick rather than the carrot. Like, make it better for them.
I think that, obviously they're linked arguments. I think they're just two separate arguments.
No offense to real estate agents, by the way.
Yeah. Look, no one I know who became a doctor, including myself or nurses, did it for the money. And that's just obvious, because we know that we're not going to make the money because we know the salary before we sign up.
Yeah.
So to say you should pay them more, despite the fact that it's all very transparent what you get when you go into nursing or doctoring, seems not quite logical. I agree. We'd love to earn more. And doctors in the UK, or at least junior doctors, have been on years of strikes about pay.
Yeah.
And finally, I'm not going to say it's the perfect outcome, but they've agreed some sort of, according to what they used to be paid, they've now got a raise.
Yeah.
It's never going to be in line with, I guess, the gravity of what they do every day. It's just not.
Yeah.
And the quirk of working in healthcare, the NHS, it's the biggest employer in the world, or Europe at least.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's just not feasible to give everyone what they want.
No, but I think it could be significantly better when you look at the amount of wastage that sort of governments are guilty of, like money that just disappears into black holes, or, contracts that don't get tendered properly, and then you've got the corruption factor. Like, I think there's a lot of wastage of public resources.
Sure.
Yeah.
But would that all ever go just to nurses, doctors?
No, I'm just saying, I just think we need to sort of look again at where we sort of value different people that are contributing to society, and, are there ways we can help make their lives better for what we're asking them to do? Just even, let's look at night shifts, for example. You know how damaging that is to your body?
I did 10 years of it.
It's horrible.
Exactly.
And then you say, well, you knew what you were signing up for. Sure. Knowing what you're signing up for when you're in your early 20s, when you don't have kids, your body's still not broken down,
And no one's give you the data on how bad it is either.
And, so things are cumulative. They build up over time, and you become less tolerant. Your body ages, your kids are growing up. And so it's like, well, just because I knew what I was signing up for at the beginning doesn't mean that I'm willing to put up with it now.
Yeah. And by the way, I was one of those people who left the NHS. So I know exactly what it feels like either way.
Yeah.
I'm just giving the devil's advocate. I'm putting myself, I guess, in the health minister's chair here.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not saying it's valid or right, but it's a logical thing to do to try and stem the flow. If you know you're losing thousands of nurses and doctors, you need to do something, right?
Yeah.
And there's always going to be more attractive jobs, whether it's working in private health checks or, I don't know, cruise ship, or there's going to be a sexier job out there versus wiping bums in hospital.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what do? You can't just make the conditions on the ward suddenly great. It's just not realistic.
No, I think there probably needs to be, a collaborative approach to, hey, like, why are you leaving? How do we make this better? What can we do?
I think, if you did have staff coming to you say, hey, I just can't take it anymore. These are my reasons why. Completely valid. Try and work out some sort of part-time share so they don't leave the workforce completely.
Yeah.
Not just for that, but for, parental sort of responsibilities and just helping people have a hybrid life, but keep them in the workforce.
Yeah. It's become, like I remember when my stories from my grandfather who worked in the public service, but not in healthcare. It was 9 to 5. There was no calls after work. They didn't work weekends. And life was just simpler. And you could support a family on a single income. Now, it's like two incomes are still struggling to provide for a family.
Living on 5 credit cards. Yeah. In debt to your eyeballs. Still can't afford life.
Yeah. And it's like, life's not about that. Life's about having a balance between working, fulfilling your career goals, achieving something, giving back to society, but also like having time for yourself and your family and your friends. Like, you want to work until you're like 70 and then go, oh, cool, I'm going to go and live my life now and enjoy the world, when you've got you're physically not in, the prime of your existence anymore, and you've given all those years to a system that's never said thank you and has just used and abused you. I don't know.
Well, look, you've owned clinics in the past in your old life, and presumably you were luring is probably the wrong word, but advertising or trying to give nurses jobs to escape hospital.
Yeah.
So what were they saying? Well,
I mean, funny you say that, because if someone came to me saying, I'm here because I just don't like what I'm doing anymore, I would never give those people jobs, because to me that, coming to me out of desperation because you didn't want to do what you did previously was never like.
It's not a calling, is it?
Well, it's not. And it's like, your patients are never going to believe you. You're not an advocate. You don't believe in what it is that we do. You don't probably think that aesthetic health is a real medicine. You're here for the wrong reasons. So, I mean, I always push back on those people and said, look, I empathize with this situation, but I'm not here to provide jobs because you want to escape. You have to be passionate about what it is that you do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not going to get through the tough days when you have no patience, when you're dealing with, someone that comes back and wants to ruin your life because there's a line here that wasn't there before you did treatment. I mean, you've got to really be passionate about this to put up with. It's got its own stresses.
Yeah.
I think so. Different challenges.
So where are we at in Australia, just to sort of, I guess, finish this off? How do we know how many nurses are leaving? I mean, anecdotally, people tell me, on a nursing course, up to 80% of the people sat in the classroom have already voiced, I'm going into cosmetics.
Yes.
Is that something that you've heard?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to quote numbers because you read different numbers from different people, but significant numbers. And it's not just here, it's international.
Yeah.
Everywhere. So as I said, I was reading an article this morning from the United States. You read one from the UK. It's a systemic trend.
I mean, if that is true or even half true, where are those nurses going to get jobs? Because things are getting harder and harder here, particularly in Australia with regulation. We'll do that in another podcast. Yeah. But I don't know if they're going to have a job to go to in cosmetics.
Well, they'd have to go and work for someone.
Yeah.
They'll have to go and work for someone, or they'll need to somehow find a doctor to work within their practice. So if they've got a successful business, then probably they're in a great position to allure a doctor to come and work with them so that they aren't running into the compliance issues that potentially they're going to be facing. But again, just going back and working for somebody else that's doctor-led, probably.
Yeah.
It's going to, if it sort of becomes an initiative that's rolled out across the country, well, I think we're going to see like the whole landscape of aesthetics change in a very profound way very quickly. And then so we're going to probably see, we'll go back to supply and demand. The less there is of something, the higher the price. So consumers are going to probably see a huge price increase because
potentially
the power dynamic's going to change, where there's going to be more people wanting treatments than there are providing it. And therefore, if you want to get in, you got to pay more money.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really interesting.
2025.
Welcome to 2025.
Yeah. Well, anyway, hopefully that has provided some sort of education and interest. I think some of those topics are going to evolve over time.
Yeah.
Still.
We might have to come back and tackle them when we have more information and data points.
100%. Well, buddy, I will be back from America by the time this podcast is out. So nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, and I hope you had a safe trip.
Cheers, mate.
See you later. Bye.
For our latest news, follow us on Instagram at Inside Aesthetics Podcast. If you want to get in touch with myself or David, follow us on Instagram as well at Dr. Jake Sloane and David_Inside Aesthetics.
Join our Patreon for invaluable business and injectable education. Get access to our global community of like-minded professionals, live and interactive Zoom sessions, hints and tip videos, webinars, and more. Head over to www.insideaesthetics.com/Patreon for more information.